Hilda will tell you, I have pushed for this day for a long, long time. I've been pushing them really, really hard, and I'm thrilled that we're here today. As the Kentucky Wired Middle Mile is being built, one of the things we absolutely cannot forget is that last mile component, and that's really what this session is about, is keeping the dialogue going on last mile so that communities know that there are resources out there and they start putting together a plan so that once the middle mile infrastructure is in place, and you're going to hear more about that throughout the day, that we actually do have a plan in our communities for making certain that we can get it to the homes, to the businesses, to the schools, to the hospitals, any of those areas that need it. I do want to recognize, because they are the ones that put this together, the SOAR Last Mile Action Team, and those members are, and most of them are here, Hilda Legg, Larry Combs, Keith Gabbard, Daryl Maynard, Gail Wright, Vernon Brown, and Kevin Liu from SOAR. Please help me thank those, because they really did work hard putting this together. There's lots of folks that we need to thank that had a part in making sure that this event happened. And at the risk of missing someone, I'm going to go ahead and apologize up front if I miss someone. I'm very, very sorry, but there are some folks that I really do think that we need to recognize. First, Congressman Rogers. As he has done on so many challenges facing the 5th Congressional District, when he sees an issue and he finds a solution, then he latches on with both hands, and he has absolutely done that. When we presented this idea to him of a middle mile network in eastern Kentucky, and then it grew into a statewide initiative, once he understood the concept, boy, he has latched on and he has made this one of his absolute top priorities. And we can't thank Congressman Rogers enough for his support of this initiative and everything he does for eastern Kentucky. Can we give Congressman Rogers a round of applause, please? I want to thank Governor Bevin and his staff, and particularly the ones that have been intimately involved, Secretary Brinkman, Secretary Landrum, and Commissioner Donahue, the Department for Local Government, Vernon Brown, and our good friend Peggy Satterley. Peggy, thank you for being here today, because Peggy's worked with us for so many years on so many things. But Department of Local Government is a true partner, and again, we couldn't do a lot of these things without their support. A very special thank you to Karen Kelly from Congressman Rogers' office, and I see that we have Carlos in the audience today representing Congressman Rogers' office. But Karen has been by my side every step of the way and has fought with me on making sure if there's roadblocks that we try to tear down those roadblocks so that we can move this initiative forward. So those folks have absolutely been incredible. The Kentucky Communications Network Authority, the Board of Directors of KCNA, and the staff. And we do have Philip Brown, the director of KCNA here, that you'll hear from on a panel in just a little bit as well. Mike Hayden, his right hand, has just, Mike works around the clock. I don't know when that guy sleeps, because he literally does seem to work around the clock. But Philip and his entire staff and the hard work that they do. Our SOAR group, Shaping Our Appalachian Region. Jared and Kevin could not be here because they're at a Power Initiative workshop in West Virginia today, as is Vernon and several of the other folks that would have been here if that wasn't scheduled at the exact same time. It ended up that the 29th was just a really busy day, so we had to sacrifice some of those things, but we'd already set the date, so we went ahead with it. But the SOAR Board of Directors has been a huge, huge supporter of this, and the SOAR staff. The Appalachian Regional Commission and USDA Rural Development, again, a critical partner. Congressman Rogers has secured a lot of funding through Appalachian Regional Commission to help build this middle mile network, especially in Ring 2, the bottom of Ring 1A and Ring 2. And we've got maps if you want to know what those rings are. If you don't know what those rings are, we've got maps over here. Philip, thank you for bringing those. I want to thank the Center for Rural Development Board of Directors, my bosses, that allow me to dream on these big ideas that Congressman Rogers is always challenging us about, and for being understanding when things don't hit always as they should. Timing gets delayed or challenges come up that we have to overcome, but the Center Board of Directors have been absolutely amazing in support of this initiative. They see the value as well in Eastern Kentucky. And last of all, you folks. This is about you, the local community. How do we help you get the high-speed, high-capacity, affordable broadband that you need in your community? Now, we've got a lot of people that are doing that. We've got some pockets that they've done a fabulous job, and you're going to hear that on some of the panels, especially this afternoon. We've got some of the local providers that are going to be on a panel that have done an amazing job. It's all those other holes that we're trying to fill in that we want to make certain that those communities have the same access that these communities that have done a fabulous job. And there's some really good success stories in here that you'll hear about today. So sit back, enjoy the day. I'm going to not kick it up a notch and bring up the high energy portion of the agenda. I'm going to introduce Hilda Legg to lead us through part of the rest of the program. I apologize because we have the Department of Homeland Security here today doing a site visit, so I'm going to have to be running back and forth, but I'll be here every minute that I can. But thank you again for being here. At this time, I'll bring up Ms. Hilda Legg.
And thanks very much for the opportunity to work with you and the center staff back here at Center for Rural Development. Appreciate it very, very much. My sidekick right here for this session is Larry Combs. His title here at the Center for Rural Development is the Broadband Implementation Manager. So all you local communities, you need to know Larry and get his cell phone number and his email because he's going to be your key contact as we move through the next few months and particularly through these workshops. It is great to be home, great to be here in Somerset at the center, and great to be here talking about the thing that I'm the most passionate about. They know me too well here because Wes said, "Are you going to stand and speak?" And I said, "I'm going to try to stand behind the podium and use my comments, my remarks, stay on my notes because I could talk about this all day long." And so we'll try to stay on time today. I'm going to ask the other implementers of the workshop to stay on time today, the other panelists, and so I got to try to lead by example, so I'll do my very best and talk very fast. I want you to understand that these workshops are going to be a series. The advisory team that Lonnie mentioned, we're tasked with trying to help local communities begin to think about how they can get the last mile, how we can take advantage of the middle mile network that KCNA is building, and how we begin to build support in our communities and understand how we think about networks and financing. And so we have sort of the core curriculum. And then what we intend to do is every session take this a bit deeper into the complexity. Because when I came to the center, we started building a wide area network and I knew nothing about technology. And it is a very complex industry. There's two words I want to start with, that is urgency and dynamic. I have a third word to wrap my and Larry's session up with. In 2004, when I was administrator of the Rural Utility Service, if I would have said to you that I want to lend and build fiber to the home in a rural community, the Washington Post would have written an article that said, "That's the most absurd, wasteful thing that you could possibly do, costs too much money, Keith Gabbard." Today, just about 13 years later, we have fiber to the home. That same agency invested over $5 billion. Half of it went to fiber to the home projects in rural America. We know that 1 out of every 4 households in the United States has access to fiber to the home. We know 1 out of every 7 in the world has access to fiber to the home. We know right here you've got counties and communities that are served by these borrowers from RUS that have built fiber to the home networks, and right next door they have almost nothing in terms of connectivity. We have almost the epitome, the poster child of the divide, if you will, between the haves and the have-nots. So our task is, how do we bring Eastern Kentucky and all of Kentucky up to an equal playing field to take advantage of it? Urgency. We cannot wait. If everybody else has it, then we have to have it, folks. There is no waiting. We say that about 48% of most people have access, take the connectivity. So our people will be ready if we can get it to them. A part of that is educating them along the way in the process. The second word is dynamic. Telecommunications of all the industries and all the businesses that I've ever been involved with is the most dynamic. It changes constantly. In my tenure with dealing with technology, and I'm so not a technical person, but it is always, it's a new technology. It changes every day. It's fast. It's heavily regulated. It's very different than a lot of other industries that we as community leaders and chambers of commerces and economic development folks are involved in. And so as we begin these workshops, again, we want to start as sort of bringing us up to snuff, and I thought I would take us down memory lane just a little bit. So if you look at the slide on the screen, it's my Road to Rural Broadband, and I start with the term POTS. When I went to RUS, I had to learn a lot of new technology, a lot of new terms, and so POTS was one of them. And Alan, I know you think it's just something that you cook in, but it really isn't. It is called plain old telephone service. It's a POTS line. Now, in 1949, the REA, the Rural Electrification Administration, was charged by Congress and given the authority to loan to telecom loans. They had built out the electric, were building out the electric lines since 1935. So we understood that all those Kentuckians that left and went to Detroit to get a job still need to be able to talk to folks back in Eastern Kentucky. And so we had set up in many people's home living rooms a connection, a switchboard, and we began to have local communications. Local communications were called plain old telephone service, POTS lines. Then we assigned them a territory. This is where you can establish your business plan. And we drew lines around those, and we call those things incumbent local exchange carriers, ILECs. I didn't know what an ILEC was a few years ago, but that's a local exchange carrier. That's the person who's giving you that telephone service. As technology advanced, some companies kept up the line, some of them didn't, some improved their services, some of the wives of the owners got tired of playing the switchboard person and quit and whatever. And so we saw opportunities for entrepreneurs to say, I can do a better job of that. And so then we created what we call CLECs, a competitive local exchange carrier, someone that goes into that assigned territory and competes for that business, a competitive local exchange carrier. Then as we progressed in the broadband, internet services, more services came online rather than just telephone, we began to call ourselves telecom companies, telecommunications. And so we began to have those words, and then all of a sudden there was FTTH, FTTP, FTTC, FTTM. You know, we're really not very creative bunch of people. We might have a dynamic technology, but we're really not very creative when it comes to naming things. And it's really what they would call fiber to the home, fiber to the premise, which could be the business. It could be fiber to the meter, which many of the electric providers are getting involved in, fiber to the curb. So again, we started talking about how do we go from a telephone line to a more robust amount of connectivity all the way to the home. Then we came up with this IoT, the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things is where everything that we own or have has some degree of computer processing power. The Internet of Things involves every aspect of our lives. Your refrigerator can communicate with you when the milk bin is getting low. Your pill bottle has a chip in it that tells you your prescription needs to be refilled. Your doorbell tells you when you're sitting on the beach in Florida, someone is at your doorbell, you can begin to communicate, say, oh, leave the package, or I don't care for any of that, or whatever. They don't even know you're not home. The Internet of Things, agriculture production, it is in everything. For cities, it means water management. What are your people using? For street lights, how do you get your traffic flow of information from your street light? It is gathered through the Internet of Things and telecommunications. Smart grid. The electric companies are very engaged in smart grid. It is about everything that we do. And what is the interesting thing, and what we cannot stop, is that it's going to get bigger. If you look at this slide, it will tell you that around 2009, when we first saw we started out with what, 100 Is that what that is, Larry? In the beginning of sort of, those would be like phones and computers. And then we had the iPhone about 2009. You can see where it goes up. By 2020, we expect to have in excess of 50 billion items that we can connect, things that happen. That is going to get bigger and bigger, and we in rural America are not going to be able to access that and use that for all the things that we need in our communities if we do not have connectivity. This cable, this little, you can't really see it too well, but these little bitty fiber optics are the size of a human hair. A human hair. This is about 288 strands of fiber. This, 196 of this 288, only a bit bigger than a pencil, will carry the internet traffic of the world. Just a piece of this. Internet traffic increases 42% annually. 42% this year, 42% next year, 42% next year. Half of the college students get all their TV off of their computers. Sixth graders don't know what a Harley TV is for. Our lives are changing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not smart enough. My brain isn't big enough to comprehend what this technology and how it's going to change our children, my son, 17, how it's going to change his life. What I do know is that your children, your grandchildren, your communities will be left behind, will not be able to compete in the new age and the new world unless you can help figure out how we provide these kind of services to rural Kentucky and rural eastern Kentucky particularly. We've got some more acronyms we hope to familiarize you with, and I'm turning it over to my cohort, Larry Combs, for his, and then I'll wrap this session. Larry, tell them some more, all of these bits and megabits. It was 76 kilobits when I made my first loan at RUS in 2003.
I want to see how many people know what a flux capacitor is. Okay.
Why I think this is not a compliment. Take it away.
Thank you. So what we want to do today is to make this interactive, make it fun. This is not a lecture series, folks. It's a workshop. So, the first task we're going to give you is this turning back and forth thing, okay? That's to keep your blood going, and hopefully you'll ask some questions along the line. If at any point you've got any questions, grab one of us. We'll be glad to answer it. We've got some pretty good subject matter experts in the room. If we don't have an answer for you, we know who's got it, okay? But to give you kind of a grounding and get us started, we really do need to start from the very basics. What are bits and bytes? That is the first layer. I tell everybody that my greatest talent is I speak geek. I can talk to the IT folks and I can talk to the business people as well and hopefully make them understand each other. So we'll get started with that. Yeah, first definition that we've got up here is a bit. And I'm going to also talk about a byte at the same time. So bits and bytes, what are they? Okay. So a byte is a letter. It is a character. It's the letter A, it's the letter B, it's the letter C, it's the number 1, it's an ampersand, it's a question mark. Any kind of character that we can see on our typewriter keyboard is essentially a byte. That's how we get communication. That's how we get your advertisements across the internet. They go in bytes. Well, it's really hard to send the letter A or the letter B across the internet, so what we had to do was to come up with some way to code it. Very much like the telegraph and Morse code of the day. We can only have a signal on or off, a light on or off, an electric pulse going or not going. And so the idea of putting these bits together came up. So in a nutshell, what it is, it takes 8 bits to make a byte. So it takes 8 flashes of light or not in order to symbolize a particular character. Bits are very important to us in this fiber game because that is how we talk. So when I'm telling you that we're transmitting 8 megabits of data, that means I'm flashing a light 8 million times. Okay? And those flashes, broken up into sets of 8, actually transmit the information. When you're looking on your computer and you're seeing your file sizes, they're all in bytes. Okay? So if you're looking at your folder and it says your document is 8 kilobits, that means that it's 8 kilobytes. If you multiply that number by 8, it's going to tell you how many bits you got and how many bits you're going to have to transmit over the internet. So, you know, kind of the thing is if you're looking to transmit, and where these numbers get quite large, if you're wanting to send a 1 gigabit, or excuse me, 1 gigabyte file over the internet, that's 8 million, or excuse me, 8 billion bytes, or bits, 8 billion bits. I'm getting messed up myself. So we have to have that capacity. That's why you're looking at fiber capacity in the megabytes, in the gigabytes, and now even in the terabytes. Kilobyte is 1,000 bits. Megabyte, million, gigabyte, a billion, and terabyte, a trillion. So did I confuse everybody on that one? Just know that how we move information back and forth is with bits, okay? Flashes of lights, pulses of electricity. That's the big important piece. All this comes down to how long does it take to download a file or upload a file. I'm not going to really go into, you know, the ups and downs of this chart. It's pretty obvious that the bigger capacity you have with fiber down there at the bottom, you can transmit a 5 gig file in about 5 seconds. If you have got DSL, DS3, cable modem, 4G wireless, it just simply takes you longer and longer and longer and longer to move that file because you can only pulse that light so many times using that medium. What that means for us is that high definition movie, if you have got a 10 gigabit capable connection coming into your home, you can get it pretty darn quick. If you're trying to download it on your 3G wireless phone, not so much. It's going to take a while. Okay? If you're working with internet that's in the kilobits, it's probably going to take you about a half a day to get that same movie. So let's talk speed versus capacity. Speed is how many times that light can flash. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the gigabit connection or the megabit connection. So if your house has got a 50 meg connection, that means there's electronics on that line that can pulse 50 million times per second to move that data. If you've got a gigabit line, that light can pulse 1 billion times per second to send that data. So that's the speeds that we're talking about. And the capacity is how many fibers do you have? How much can you grow this thing? How many different networks can you operate without having to string more fiber? As Hilda pointed out, fiber is, you know, the size of a hair. We would not want to put this on a telephone pole all by itself. So, you know, your community might only need, you know, 10 fibers for the rest of civilization. But while you're putting it up, why would you not put up as much as you can while you can? Your incremental costs are so low with regard to the fiber count compared to the labor cost of actually climbing a pole and hanging that it makes financial sense to put up as much fiber as you can while you're doing it, or burying it in some communities. So that's where we're talking about capacity, making sure you've got plenty of fiber out there. The speed How fast you can move data up and down that fiber is dependent completely on the electronics and how fast those electronics can pulse that laser across that fiber. So putting in 288 strands versus 10 strands is not going to change your speed one iota. It's going to increase or decrease your capacity, okay? The electronics that go on to the fiber, today we're talking the ability to very easily run 100 gig networks. So again, that light can pulse 100 billion times per second using some magic and move signals across that. In the laboratory today, we can actually move 2.2 terabytes of data over a single pair of fiber. Now, granted, those electronics are pretty hefty priced. Right, Keith? So, you know, and again, in looking at your community and what kind of speeds you want to run at, if you're looking at putting up and hanging fiber, you're talking capacity. Once you get into, we want a 50 meg network, we want a gigabit network, that's where you need to start looking at the electronics that get hooked onto that. And so, you know, here's what we're doing it for. Increase broadband access, that's why I'm here, that's why Keith is here, that's why Alan's here. We want to make sure that we get that capacity to your home so that you can connect to the internet. Affordability. The higher speeds we can transmit, the more information we can move across that at the same time. That's going to lower the cost to hook you up and to move your data across the internet. So the faster our networks get, hopefully the more affordable that lower end will become, and everybody will move up the food chain from there. Where we have a lot of difficulty and where we need your help is on adoption. So these are people that have got access to the internet, they got a connection into their home, but they don't want it. And they don't want it because they think they don't have a use for it, they can't afford it, whatever the reason may be. Adoption is a struggle for the 5th Congressional District, which I serve, and Kentucky as a whole, quite frankly. So your communities doing public relations programs and those sorts of things is going to be vital to this process to make sure that whatever fiber we put in, whatever internet connectivity we put in, people will see a value to it and will use it. And then finally, encouraging productive use. I'm an economic development person. If we're putting in something that's not going to make somebody $1, it's really of no interest to me. I love that you can get Netflix a little bit faster now, but I'd really love it if you were selling stuff on eBay. I'd really love it if you had your own store on Amazon. I'd really love it if you now sourced your raw goods at half the price you were paying for before from somebody in another state or another country because you have access to the internet. You know, I hope those little brown boxes that Amazon sends out are moving all through our district. And I'm going to let Hilda pump us back up again. That's been your primer. I hope everyone took notes. There will be a test later.
I just want you all to know that I purposely would not try to do that technology description like Larry did. Thank you, Larry, very much for doing that. And so the third word, other than urgency and dynamic, which he talked about, the third word is leadership. You know, Gandhi said, we must be the change we want to see. And if we don't have the service in our communities, if the providers that are there now have not built out their network, are not giving you high-speed, true broadband, then who else is going to do it? Rural is the most costly to serve, and yet it is being done by small communities across the country. If it were easy, somebody else would have already done it. If there was a big profit to be made, somebody else would have already done it. The beneficiaries are going to be the people in your community, the taxpayers, your constituents. When the REA first began, many of us might even think about it because it's so common today. They would say, let us put a pole on your property, and they say, oh, no, you let my best cow out. I don't want you to do that. That happened down in the neighbor's, Barn Lot when they set a poll. They said, oh, it's going to cost you $5 a month to be a member of the REA. Oh, no, 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 that's way too expensive, and $5 was a lot of money back in that day and time. And I said, we really don't need it anyway. The lanterns are working just fine when we go out of a morning, and it's, you know, life is on, and besides, there's probably something evil about it, and we certainly know there's evil on the internet. But again, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't bring it to our communities, I don't know who's going to. It won't be an easy task. It won't be a simple task. There is no silver bullet, and there is no cookie cutter approach. And so today is the beginning of a dialogue and a discussion. I hope that you all participate by asking a lot of questions. You see, it's going to take leadership. It's going to take a hard-driven commitment. It's going to take money. It's going to take being able to talk those people out of that $5 a month. It's going to have to, you're going to have to stick to your guns. You're going to have to reach out for help. You're going to have to plan long and hard and learn a lot of stuff that you maybe never even wanted to know if you're like me. But at the end of the day, as leaders in Eastern Kentucky, I don't know that we have a choice but to try to figure out how to take that last mile to our neighbors and our families and our businesses and our children, and take advantage of the middle mile that the Commonwealth is bringing to our area.